Welcome to Practical Shamanism. I'm Katie Weatherup. I'm a former engineer with 20 years of experience working as a shamanic practitioner, and I hope to help you to connect to your personal power and magic, and to support you in living a really good life that just keeps getting better. Thank you so much for joining me. So I'd like to talk today about the myth of the one true soul purpose. And this may sound like a little bit of a funny thing to think about, but I get asked this a lot, and people who are spiritually inclined and metaphysically inclined, if we distill down a lot of what people have shared, they're like, I want to meet my soulmate and I want to know my soul purpose. And when they say soul purpose, under that, they usually mean that there should be something that people will pay them money for. So they're already limiting of all the human experiences and all the contributions, limiting it down to there should be work involved with it. And one of the flaws with this is it's an incredibly potent marketing gimmick to sell people on. If you have passion, which a lot of us do, a lot of us are really deeply passionate people with an incredible desire to change the world. So if you're someone who's connected to that passion and that desire, and you're feeling friction with your job, you're feeling disengaged, which very, very many people are. If you run the statistics, the many people feel disenfranchised and disengaged at work. And you combine those two into this vision of, if I knew this soul purpose thing, then I could be passionate about it and people would pay me money. And there are a lot of programs that sell really effectively based on that misguided premise. And so when you assume that soul purpose translates into what people will pay money for and that you need to work that out in order to have a happy life, I would offer a consider the source. Consider whether there's a financial incentive in selling you on that idea. And I'm speaking as someone who is incredibly aligned with my soul purpose, in love with my work. I love being a shamanic practitioner. I used to be an engineer. This is so much better. And at the same time, one of the things that I think people don't realize or recognize is they imagine that if they could make a career shift to something that they really deeply, profoundly loved, their life would be happy and fulfilled. And I live a pretty happy and fulfilled life, but there are a lot of other distinctions that have nothing to do with what I do for work that are producing those results. And one of the sobering things that I would say is, if you're looking for a happy life, trying to figure out solo entrepreneurship and get a business going and get it all sorted, is not the low-hanging fruit. Like, you could raise your happiness levels so much with some other approaches that could come online and have you feeling appreciably happier within a week. I may talk about that in another podcast because I think it's such a rich topic. But start Googling around, start looking at what neuroscience says about happiness, if this is something that sparks your interest before I get to it, because there's a lot of data. And I would say that I'm in deep gratitude. I love that I get to do this. And I still work with how well I transition out of sleep in the morning and doing the work for my business that isn't my favorite, of a lot of email and a lot of background desk work. One of the things to understand is, if you have a passion that you do for work and you have your own business doing it, only about 50% of your time is going to go into the thing that you actually love doing. And I would say it's even less for me. I spend more time doing things that are not journeying on behalf of my clients and telling them about the journey report, or journeying on behalf of my students and in my group programs. Like, that's less than half of the time that I spend on my business. And so I had all these fantasies when I didn't have a desk job. I'm like, when I'm not an engineer anymore, I'll learn to cook and my house will be so clean and I'll get all the exercise I need to do. And I still really work with those things. The cooking thing has not happened. I've been doing shamanic work for 20 years. I've been doing it as my full-time gig for over 12 years now, and I still have not learned to cook. I can assemble a meal, but cooking, never a skill that I got around to mastering. So there are a lot of ideas that we have about what that would provide, and I would invite you to take your misalignment with your livelihood as a legitimate, important, valuable question to ask, but the answers to what would give you right livelihood, what would give you a satisfying, fulfilling, amazing, I feel really in flow state when I'm at work. I love what I do. There's a lot of grace with it. It meets my needs really well. That may go alongside with some aspect. It's undoubtedly going to be tied into what your soul finds interesting about the world, but it's not a narrow thing for people. One of the big mistakes that happens about that one true soul purpose is they assume that there is a job title that if they were doing that, it would be aligned, or even a cause. Like one of the things that I certainly found early on, which was a terrible shock, is how often unhealthy and dysfunctional organizers are in nonprofits. Like people are coming together because of their passion for doing a good thing, and they often take less money, or they're in a structure that does pay, and it's miserable because the inner office dynamics are terrible and people are every bit as dysfunctional as they are in ordinary corporate America, and all the craziness happens. So if you're working on behalf of a cause you love and you're working with amazing, inspired, effective people, woohoo, that is awesome, totally the way to go. But that may not be what is necessarily the experience. So just be very careful if your ideas about what this soul purpose thing are a similar fantasy to this idea of all my worries would be over if I won the lottery. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily something that lives inside of you, but I can certainly find inside of me the notion that if I were to come into financial independence, enough money that I never ever had to worry about money again, that would massively impact my happiness. But what neuroscience says when they survey lottery winners a year later, they're not appreciably happier than they were before. Their baseline level of happiness is exactly the same. So sure, there's an ecstatic part of that, but they still have all the issues that they had before, relationship challenges or health challenges or everything else about what creates a balanced life is still there and available. And yet I was appalled to learn that we actually spend more money on lottery tickets than we do on books and videos and concerts and theater and events. So the potency of engaging with this fantasy, that this incredibly improbable fantasy that if we had unlimited wealth, that would be the thing that would make us happier than supporting the arts of a performer that we adore, and I think that's such an interesting place. And so it's just an invitation. It could feel like bad news if you're like, no, I have this plan for my life. I'm going to win the lottery. I have this plan for my life. I'm going to find my one true soul purpose, and then I will be ecstatically happy. And so, you may be feeling some resistance or some tension, but I actually think this is really good news. And the reason I think it's good news is because you have so much space in your life for what a life incredibly aligned with your soul purpose and intention could look like. Like, what if there are hundreds of jobs? This livelihood thing is confusing because we have an abundance of choice, but I would argue that most people don't have a very good map for how they choose their livelihood. They do it based on the money. That's one of the factors people pay attention to. The work, whether they feel like they can do the work and whether they feel like they would enjoy doing the work. But there are all these other factors they don't pay attention to that have enormous effect on whether you enjoy your job or not. And then there are these people like really locked into getting what they thought was their dream job, and it's just not making them as happy as they thought. And I think it's because there are probably like 20 different distinctions for what's going to really create a way to do livelihood that's going to be super conducive to your experience and really, really, really support your happiness in a good way and leave you charged up and excited to engage with the rest of your life. And most people aren't even aware of those. So the good news is you could do a lot of different things and be deeply aligned with your soul purpose. And one of the ways I want to illustrate this, one of the dating coaches that I've engaged with a lot of her material is Alison Armstrong. And one of the things that she says is, when it comes to finding true love, it's not a scarcity problem, it's a sorting problem. And what she means by that is we have this idea of the one, and Hollywood bolsters this mythology with stories where clearly the line of the rom-com is going to be sorting out who's the one. If it's not available, you find him or her, and if it is available, you sort between multiple candidates. That's a story. And again, people who have a mature, emotionally intelligent, evolved approach to relationship know that there are many distinctions that make for a successful relationship. Aligned values around money, sexual compatibility, good communication skills. There's so many distinctions for who has success, and yet the Hollywood mythology distills it down to, if you love someone enough, that'll be fine. And I would argue that if the person is addicted to meth, there is no loving each other enough that's going to make that fine. Like, people can be genuinely, profoundly passionate about each other, but if there's heavy addiction figuring in, or somebody's a workaholic and you never ever get to see them, how profoundly you love them is not necessarily going to create relationship happiness. And I've researched this extensively in my own life with some people I was deeply, deeply in love with who were very poorly aligned for what would truly satisfy me and truly make me happy and truly be easeful and sustainable and graceful. And so similarly, she goes back to, Alison Armstrong goes back to hunter-gatherer times and says, okay, yeah, it was true for most of human history. Hunter-gatherer tribes, not a lot of people can live on a given piece of land, so you didn't have a lot of people to choose from for mating. So there really were like maybe 3 people in the tribe you could pick, and one of them was extremely unpleasant. And so that fierce competition for the one and trying to win them and all these impulses, was a really big deal. And humans, through a lot of history, there were just a really, really limited number of possibilities for who you could be with. So you could pick the one out of 20 possible candidates or even 30 possible candidates. But we have an abundance of people. The one thing we have a lot of is people in this world. So it's not a scarcity problem, it's a sorting problem. How do you sort through all the many, 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 many attractive people that you are drawn to, with whom you could create partnership, and efficiently realize what's going to provide success? Like, for me, one of the key elements is, no matter how beautiful the person's soul is, no matter how sexually attracted I am, no matter how exquisite the heart connection, if I can't communicate with them, if our approach to communication doesn't naturally harmonize, I know now to walk away, because I cannot sustain relationship across a mismatch in that chakra. And I've put enormous energy into having really good functional communication skills, but that doesn't mean I can communicate with anyone. There are people who that's just not a value for them. It's just not their gig. They don't do that. And that's just not something that I'm ever going to be able to successfully work with. And so in navigating this one true soul purpose, it may feel like, wow, if my mind could just have the thing, it would be so much better. And the trouble is, you're looking to the wrong aspect of self for soul purpose. It's not a thinking mental thing. The thinking mind is ruled by the 3rd chakra, the solar plexus, and it's a magnificent chakra. We could not drive cars without the linear approach to thinking. There's so much that we can do, so many ways we can navigate our lives exquisitely because of this chakra. But the soul purpose is about the crown chakra. The crown chakra is what knows about what inspires this essence that came in. That's the one that's talking to your higher self. That has the connection to your higher self. So we're literally looking in the wrong place in our energetic anatomy and using the wrong ways to tune in when we try for that soul purpose that is concrete and defined and goes into language well and is a really specific thing. So the gift of this, just like it's good news, like it's a complicated new problem for modern people to find a life partner, given that it's a sorting problem instead of a scarcity problem. So you don't just grab the very best candidate out of the limited number you can choose from and figure out how to make it work. You sort through, and how do you efficiently and effectively sort this incredibly wide range of other humans that might fit the bill, or even multiple humans that might fit the bill if you happen to be polyamorous, which I won't go into because that's another level of complexity. But the beauty of it is this abundance and this opportunity to make exquisite connections. And what I would offer for soul purpose, much like finding a really aligned person, is when you're lit up with your own energy and you have your clarity, you can quickly sort through the things and know very, very quickly what doesn't align. So I can find something that my crown chakra and my soul purpose is like, no, it's not a good fit. It's not the right thing. My soul isn't interested in that. And the beauty and the power of shamanism is developing the ability to tune into these other parts of ourselves so that we have a compass beyond the thinking mind, that we're able to access our intuition and our body knowledge and our inspiration and our heart chakra and the places where something wouldn't be viable. There's so much wisdom inside of us, and people tap into so little of it. And if the soul purpose isn't a doing thing that you lock down and you learn about, but instead is this amazing compass, amazing way of orienting in the world, and the trick isn't to lock it down or get some psychic who's really good to tell you what it is for you. There's a huge market for that. Lots and lots of people pay lots and lots of money for that. But instead is this living, dynamic, moving aspect of yourself that you learn to talk to, that you learn to engage with. And that's where shamanism, a lot of times people think about shamanic journey as going out. You go out into the universe, you look at the stars and the trees, and you talk to your guides and you plot your next steps, and it's magnificent for that. But it's also magnificent for going within, for hearing your deep inner wisdom. And you can do that with shamanic journey. You can do that with listening to a drum beat and going into an altered state and sitting around a fire and talking to the aspects of yourself that you may have gotten out of the habit of listening to. And you can also do it with any kind of other mindfulness techniques. So you can go on a mini vision quest where you go for a walk out in nature and just be with the question, where does my soul feel friction in the world that I'm in? What is the easiest, simplest, most available change I could make that would make my soul enjoy my life more? Like, these are really powerful questions to ask. And we may sometimes create really dramatic shifts in our lives, really big shifts in our lives to come into a better alignment with our core inner truth. If you're a lawyer that is defending criminals who have done egregious things to people, that may be really, really a hard place for your soul to be. So you may have a pretty massive career change that gets you out of participating with terrible people who've done terrible things. You'd also, the upside, as any lawyer I'm sure would tell you, is when you get to help innocent people, and that's lovely. But the deal is kind of, there's this mixture. And unless you're a lawyer who is privileged enough to say, I'm just not going to take a case that I don't believe in, which it would be another dramatic career change, another dramatic shift, there's this ability to learn this intimacy with this core part of yourself and use it not to get closure on the thing you're supposed to do, because it's an evolving thing. It may be really aligned and interesting to your soul to have babies, but then you might get here and say like, wow, I'm so much more excited about this other dream. And so your soul might change its mind. It might pick something different. And then the purpose of having babies would shift. It would go away. Or you might have not have planned to have babies and get here and find somebody, and the way your souls dance together, you and your partner, like, oh, inviting another soul in would be so awesome. How fun would that be? And at a later part in your life, whether or not you choose to have children might not be relevant unless you really want to adopt. So it might be something that isn't even something to tune into. So this soul purpose, if you stop looking at it as the one true thing, that you'll alleviate your loneliness and disengagement and ennui and lack of luster for life, if you could find either the one as a soulmate or the one as a soul purpose, and instead look at it as this amazing compass. And to be honest, there's a parallel with wisdom around relationship where I think it's really legitimate to want an aligned partner. But when someone is so hungry for that, they'll make unsustainable, really painful compromises. I know this from personal experience. And so if you're someone who invests deeply in your relationship to yourself, in being in really joyful, good relationship to yourself, and you invest in being in really joyful, rich relationship in your friendships, if you have richness in those areas, then for sure you can still absolutely be very interested in effectively navigating the world in a way that addresses that sorting problem, that puts you in the path of people who would have a chance of being the right gender and age demographic and level of functionality in the world and all the things that would work for you. But you can really rock the sorting problem. But when we're so hungry for something that is a substitute for that, we tend to make a little bit of problematic choices. And the soul purpose, learning to hear your core soul truth, is a deep internal relationship, and it's a compass. It's not meant to be a doing thing that can only look one way. So there could be a cause that you're so passionate for contributing to, but there could be 100 different ways that you engaged in making a meaningful difference in other people's lives who are struggling with the pain point or the problem. So the invitation here is to consider that it's a orientation system. What your soul has to say is a sense, just like your vision that you use to navigate the world. And it is a valuable, important voice to listen to. But the idea that it's ever going to get distilled down into a objective or a career title or a doing thing, and you'll dial that in and that will be the end of it, is, I think, a dangerous myth that gets perpetrated in the metaphysical community. Again, sometimes it's a marketing thing because there's a lot of money to be had in telling people that you can provide that for them. I can teach you how to hear this inner guidance and be connected to it and be moving organically from it. But I can't tell you who you are on this level. I can provide some reflections. I can see some of that. I can take counsel with your guides. But anyone who's trying to sell you on the, I'll tell you what your life mission is, and it takes you away from yourself. And sometimes I have people tell me what other psychics have told them, and I really disagree. So sometimes if you're looking outside yourself, you can get bad information, and it can lead you further from what would really be flow state for you, what would really be that graceful, happy, aligned life. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope that there's some supportive information in here for you. Thank you so much for joining me. To learn more about me and my work, please visit my website at handsoverheart.com. There you can join my mailing list for access to free bonus content in the members-only area. If you've enjoyed this, please consider subscribing and leaving a review. It would help me out a lot. Also, a special thank you to my patrons for your support. You offer me the time freedom to work on passion projects like this one. If you'd like to receive personal shamanic support from me and my team of guides, please consider joining my Patreon community. You'll find the link below. And again, thank you so much for listening. This is Katie Weatherup, wishing you wholeness and happiness.